Hi everyone, my name's Tristan and I'm the creator of Rufus API. In today's video, I'll show you how to set up Rufus API in your ActiveChat chatbots. Specifically, I'll be walking you through adding your API key to ActiveChat, setting up the JSON block, performing a call, and getting the response data to use in your conversation flow. For this tutorial, I'll be hooking up the currency endpoints, which you can find in the Rufus API documentation, available here. This endpoint has two modes, convert and exchange rate, and I'll be using it to convert a product price into our user's chosen currency in the chatbot. So the currency endpoint takes a few parameters, but at a minimum, you'll need to provide the mode, which in this case is convert here. Then we go down to the currency that you want to convert it from, the one you want to convert it to, and the amounts that you'll actually want to convert. You'll also need to add your API key to authenticate the request, and I'll show you that in a minute. There are some extra parameters like rounding and styling that you can use if you want to change the way the result is presented, but we won't cover that in this tutorial. So the currency codes are the ones you've probably seen before, and there's a full list in these links here. The endpoint actually supports both 3-letter currency codes and 2-letter country codes. There's a bit more information on that later on. So this is what a conversion URL actually looks like when it's all put together. So see here we have the convert mode selected and we're converting from US dollars into British pounds. So converting 100 US dollars here. When you actually run the call, this is what Rufus API sends ActiveChat in the background. Here we have the conversion result, so £76.12. I'll be showing you how to extract this value and include it in a message block later on. And these two here form what's called an HTTP response. You can ignore those for now, but if you want to find out more, check the quick start guide in the docs via the link in the video description. Now, let's head on over to ActiveChat and we'll get it all set up. So in order to pull external data into platforms like ActiveChat, you need to make use of the JSON block I mentioned earlier in the video. So JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation, and it's a way of formatting data in a way that software like ActiveChat can understand. The JSON block on ActiveChat is actually available here on the left menu. If you had to scroll down a little bit to find it. In my case, I need to hover over this ref add option. But there you can see the JSON block. So I drag it here into the builder. Clicking on it will then show you this dialog here on the right. This here is where you add the base endpoint URL. In this case, the currency endpoint URL that we looked at earlier. And this part below is where you add the parameters. You could ignore this header section as that's not needed by the API at this stage. So let's grab that base URL and add it here. So we'll go back to the documentation and copy this base part here. So that's the base in the URL section there. We'll now need to add parameters. So if you click the plus icon, that adds a new row with the parameter and a value. We'll need 5 in total for this endpoint. So 2, 3, 4, 5. So 1 for the API key, 1 for the mode, 1 from the currency from. So actually, I'll start typing those in now. API key, mode. Then we have the from currency, then the to currency, and then the amount. So as you can see here, we've broken these parameters down into kind of the ActiveChat format. Now, this is where your API key makes an appearance. You'll need to get it from your dashboard, which can be found on the account page. So if you click accounts in the top right-hand corner of the Rufus API website. So this is the dashboard if you haven't already used it. It shows your API key as well as your usage. So on the Pug plan, the free plan, you get 100 calls per day. And we can see here, I haven't used it today, so I've got 100 calls left. It resets at midnight UTC or GMT. If you haven't used an API before and have no idea what I'm talking about when I say API key, an API key is essentially a password that's used by APIs, and it authenticates the request. So it knows who it's coming from. And you'll need to use it every time you request data from Rufus API. So your API key is actually generated automatically when you register your account. If you haven't already got your account and you've not seen this before, head on over to rufusapi.org/register or follow the link in the video description below. So now we'll copy the API key and then head back to ActiveChat and paste it here into the API key field. So we can now add the rest of the values to complete the request. So for the sake of argument, let's say that we are converting from British pounds, my native currency, into US dollars. So we'll add here convert, spell properly. Then we'll do it from GBP into US dollars, and we'll add 100 here as the amount. So when this request is sent, Rufus API will send ActiveChat the converted value back and automatically save it to a variable called API value. So to use this value after it's been set by the API, you can simply reference the API value in a block somewhere afterwards, like so. So it gets a text block out. We'll then link it from JSON API into text, and you can say the total in USD is then two curly brackets API underscore value. So in this example, we've simply predetermined what the amount is, the currency from, the currency to. But in reality, you're going to want to give your users the option to do their own conversion. If you wanted to give your users some input and say convert one of your product's prices into their local currency, you could ask them which currency they use in a block before, then save their response as a variable, and then use that variable here in the JSON block. So whilst we've just added 100 in here, it might be you want to attach a variable based on like a previous conversation, say a quick reply or a button or something like that. To illustrate, here's a complete conversation flow I built earlier that takes user input. I've got a fake product up here somewhere. There we go. Fake product that has a price of £19, and we then ask the user if they want to convert it into their local currency. Zoom in a bit so you can see the text. So want to know how much it costs in your local currency, select an option from below. So here we have a listen block with some quick replies, and it's then saved to target currency. They can then choose from one of the options. They can also, as you know, type their own response. So whatever they type will be saved into target currency. So if one of the options here isn't what they need, say they want to convert it into New Zealand dollars or Canadian dollars or yen, whatever it may be, it'll save it to this target currency variable here. This will then get passed to the JSON block, which will then, as we saw earlier, will then convert it, pass it back to ActiveChat as a variable, and save it here to the API value. You'll notice here that I have an extra parameter at the end, the style one. So what that does is it lets you format the currency conversion response. Say if you want to include the currency code alongside it, or you want to add the currency symbol, say like a dollar sign, pound sign, a rupee sign, yen, and so on. So it kind of adds a bit of extra flair to it. You'll also see that I've used a variable for the API key rather than adding it in line. So what I've done there is at the beginning of the conversation, or the beginning of the recipe, you'll see that at the beginning of the block, I have saved it as a variable. So this means that I could have 20 different JSON requests in this conversation, and I don't have to keep typing in the API key. So you also notice here that with the error, I've created a block which includes the response code and the response message. If we go back to the example here, so these are the response codes that indicate whether it's been successful. A 200 HTTP code means it was a success. And there are other ones which are available. If you go to the quick start documentation via the link in the description, you'll see what each of the codes mean. So it'll give you a code and then a description of the message or what the error is. Say if you've run out of API credits, or the response wasn't kind of recognized, or the parameters you put in were wrong, or anything like that, it'll give you the problem, so you can then fix it rather than wondering what the hell's going on. So for the purpose of debugging, just in the development phase, if there's an error, I want it to spit out a text block with the response code and the message. So to demonstrate what that actually looks like in a Messenger conversation, I've brought up the Rufus API chatbot, which is temporarily using this API JSON tutorial. So if I type in start just to restart the conversation, and nice simple navigation, API JSON tutorial, which will then load up that one. So that all went very fast because I haven't set up wait times. So here's a GIF for your dog, and here is a fake 2x dog bones product for £19. So it then follows up saying, want to know how much it costs in your currency, select an option from below. So these are the quick replies. Now you can either select one of these, so that's US dollars, Indian rupees, and I think South African rand. But let's, to kind of shake things up, let's use a different currency. So say euro. Not that fancy, but it's still a nice example. So that's now been sent to Rufus and then pinged right back and it's given me the response there. So in euro, so that's the variable that I sent them, that'll be 22 euros and 25 cents. So that is the API value there. Now this is what it looks like with the styling on. So it's got a nice little euro symbol there. Symbol support is available for a good number of currencies. I can't remember how many off the top of my head, but there is also proper formatting. So some currencies have the currency symbol at the end of the number, for example, and so that will, depending on which currency you use, it should present it in the right way. And that's how it works. There's a lot that you could do with this endpoint and the other endpoints available on Rufus API. I'd recommend heading over to the documentation at rufusapi.org/docs. Have a dig around and see what you could use in your bot. That's all from me. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment or email me directly on api@rufusapi.org or send a message here.